Please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and we are back on another Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs. And with me always is the co-host who is the most, and he is Bradley Emmy, co-founder and CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing today?
Hey, what's up, Elvin? It's been a while since we've done one of these. I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I actually wanted to pick your brain real fast. Could you let us know all about Pangram Labs? Maybe people go, what is Pangram Labs? What do you guys do? Tell us all about Pangram Labs real quick.
Oh, Pangram is the leading provider of AI detection software for schools and educators. We focus a lot on AI transparency rather than it being a punitive tool for AI detection. We really focus on trying to understand what are the things behind AI-generated text that educators can use just to inform their own conversations and have better academic integrity conversations with students, which is why we're doing this.
Awesome. Yes. So go to pangram.com to learn more if you're interested. Pangram.com to learn more. Okay, let's get into, how we work, Bradley. So our guest, she's returning, as a matter of fact. You haven't been on in years. So it's very cool that she's coming back for our Academic Integrity series. And she is, all right, here we go, right, ladies and gentlemen. See if I can get her name right. She is, the pressure's on. She is Mallory Dwinal. I know it's going to get it. Dwinal Palisch. And she's the president of Craft Education. Mallory, how did I destroy your name?
Alvin, you nailed it. Rock and roll.
All right. Awesome.
You got it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so kind, Mallory. I appreciate that. So, Mallory, we love to get right into it. Thanks for being here, first of all. Always appreciate your time. So we know that you're busy. First question is, tell us about what you do. How do you do it?
Absolutely. So day to day, I spend my time as the president of the Craft Education System. We are a nonprofit public data utility, and it is probably the most boring thing you've ever heard of, but it unlocks some really important stuff. So I'll get to what that important stuff is in a second, but let's back up. I started as a classroom teacher. Before that, I actually did my PhD in teacher labor shortages as an economist, became a classroom teacher, then became a high school principal and career and technical education coordinator. Was really frustrated with our inability to build our own teacher supply, and so then became the founder of Reach University, which is a regionally accredited nonprofit institution that does teaching apprenticeship degrees. So turning a paraprofessional or a classroom aide job into a registered apprenticeship that confers college credits, pays you every step of the way, and at the end of the apprenticeship, you get your college degree, you get your teaching credential, and a full-time job as a teacher without ever leaving the workforce, without ever going into student loan debt, et cetera. That is where we last spoke, Alvin. In the time since then, apprenticeship degree pathways have really taken off, not just in the teaching space, though certainly there. When we last spoke, I think Reach was one of 2 or 3 registered apprenticeships for teaching in the country. Today, there are over 166 registered apprenticeship programs across 49 states and DC. And so we're seeing this pathway take off, not just in teaching, but we're also seeing similar momentum in apprenticeship degrees for social work, for nursing, for all of these other pathways. And that opened up this really important challenge that Reach was seeing, but that the whole space is now seeing. And that's what I do here today at Craft, which is this. If you are trying to blend together, let's say, high school career and technical education with your local community college's dual enrollment program, with the Federal Department of Labor's pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship systems, and God forbid you try to get WIOA funding from the ETA along the way, you're now talking about 3 to 4 different regulatory systems that all need to know what's happening in that experiential learning, right, in that earn and learn pathway, but they need it reported in different formats on different timelines for slightly different variables. And what we were seeing happen in the space was lots of institutions where the tail started to wag the dog. They said, we believe in these pathways, we believe in these programs, but we just can't do it. The data compliance is too messy, it's too heavy, it's too hard to get the funding that we're supposed to get from this compliance. We're leaving it alone. And so Craft is a tool that was our brainchild for our work at Reach, and now is a public, free, nonprofit data utility that, thanks to some very generous philanthropic support and government support, allows us to be the data layer that powers any institution's earn and learn pathways anywhere in the country.
Real quick, is there a WGU connection, Western Governors University connection?
There is. So Western Governors University, as we looked around and realized that this needs to become a big nonprofit public data utility. And we believed very vehemently in this nonprofit piece. We believed in this being a public data utility. The places that have a track record and a history of delivering on those sorts of public infrastructure tools is actually a pretty short list. And so WGU acquired Craft about a year ago to turn us into that public data tool. And so similar to their history with things like the Open Skills Network, their work in the LER space with the Digital Achievement Wallet, they have a governance structure that allows for creations of tools that might be used by the university, but exist independent of the university as their own legal entity. And they acquired Craft to turn us into one such ecosystem tool. And we've been working with as a part of that WGU ecosystem for about 9 months now, and it's been a dream.
Yeah, a shout out to Scott Pulsifer, president there at WGU, who's been on the podcast a few times. Very innovative leader, which makes sense that you're working with him.
I will say, a conversation for another day, because I have some pretty strong opinions about higher ed's mark on innovation in general. I don't think any institution other than WGU, under any other leader other than Scott Pulsifer, would have been a place we would have entertained an offer from. So there's something really special there.
Yeah, absolutely. So academic integrity series. So let's get into it.
Yep.
Mallory, how do you define academic integrity?
Oh man, I have some thoughts on this. I gotta say, Bradley, I'm hoping we can still be best friends on the other side.
Oh, we love this. No.
All right. So here's my axe to grind around academic integrity. And I know, Bradley, that Pangram Labs actually has a very nuanced approach and thoughtful approach in how you all think about this. But my big axe to grind with higher ed is the way we talk about academic integrity right now is the absence of what we call cheating. And specifically, the conversation is cheating by using AI to produce content as a student for an exam, for a classwork assignment, whatever it might be. And I will wage this war forever. I think that is the wrong way to think about academic integrity. And I think, if anything, it shines a spotlight onto the ugly truth that lives in higher ed right now. Integrity is a two-way street. So if we're going to talk about academic integrity, we also have to talk about academy integrity. And is higher ed delivering on its promise? And is it engaging thoughtfully as the society and the world changes? And the way we're talking about academic integrity today tells me that we are not. We are missing the forest for the trees. So I haven't answered your question yet, but let me tell you, I got some opinions on it. And particularly when I think about academic integrity, I think about what is the value proposition, like what is the value add that higher ed is supposed to be adding to a student's life in terms of what they know how to do, what they can do with that knowledge afterwards, and how are we engaging students in a way where when we talk about academic integrity, we're talking about actually developing those skills and not trying to catch them in some cat and mouse game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think in general, I think most people that are within academic integrity and are experts in it, would say that the responsibility for academic integrity falls on the faculty and the institution. We should not be blaming students.
And let's even talk about this, right? So right now, our response to academic integrity, right? Our big concern is there are all of these articles by groups like the Wall Street Journal and others that it's suspected that as many as 50% of college students are cheating, quote unquote, cheating on their coursework and violating academic integrity principles in the ways they're using AI. And as a result, we're seeing tens of millions of more copies of Blue Books being sold, right? As this resurgent of the Blue Book. And the Wall Street Journal gave some stat about 80% increase in the use of Blue Books in the University of California system, 50% increase in the University of Florida system. And my thing with all of that is, why in God's good green earth are we fighting so hard to keep students from using tools that make them more capable instead of just changing the level and the threshold of what we expect them to be capable of doing? Why are we trying, like, it just reminds me so much of in the 70s when calculators came out and there was this whole big to-do about calculators are going to erode students' basic math skills. It's going
For
to
me, it was Wikipedia.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Wikipedia. Oh,
yeah.
I'm here with you, right? Like it's going to erode their critical thinking skills. No, it's not. And the fact of the matter is 90% of these same professors who are lamenting students using AI on their coursework are using AI to develop their lectures and their assessments. And that's okay, right? Like this is a tool that pushes forward the boundaries of human productivity, of humans' efficiency, but embrace it. Don't sit there and try to fight students from using it. Like change what it is you're measuring. And that's the thing that kills me right now is we are not changing what we measure as technology allows us to do more, and then are mad that people are able to do different things against those original measuring sticks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked to Jason Golia lately, and I think like one of his points is that like, if you're trying to just use the same assessments that you used like 5 to 10 years ago in the age of AI, that's just like fitting like square peg into the round hole. And then like slapping an AI detector on top of that, like doesn't really, that doesn't do our students a service here.
I would go a step further because like, let's go back to this value proposition of college and higher ed, right? Let's talk about the ROI on higher ed, and we can talk about it being all of these other things of, civic engagement, et cetera. But let's talk about the nuts and bolts why many people choose to go to college today. The overwhelming choice is the financial ROI on terms of earnings over the course of your lifetime. So for the first time ever in history, college graduates right now have a higher unemployment rate than the average population, right? For recent college grads, it's 6.6%. For the average population, it's about 4.2%. That has never happened before. At the same time, that's just the people who are unemployed. At the same time, there was a report last year from Burning Glass that over 50% of people with a college degree are underemployed a year out of graduation, right? Like a year after graduating, they're still in jobs that never required a college degree to begin with, that has all sorts of path dependency for their long-term returns. And now there's all this talk about how those things are only going to get worse because AI is starting to erode that first rung in the job ladder for skilled professions, right? For things like writing and copy editing, for things like, financial reporting or software development, that those first jobs are about to go away. So I would argue that it's not just that we shouldn't be trying to stop students from using AI. We should be saying for you to be not just employed, but employed in a way that's appropriate to the level of training you have in an age where AI is eating away all of these first order jobs that you previously could have attained. You have to come out better and able to do more than used to be the case. So it's not just that you can use AI. I'm going to give you tasks that you can't complete without AI. And I'm going to hold you accountable for, did you use it efficiently? Did you use it effectively? Did you do it well enough that we can justify your employment, your gainful employment opportunities after you leave here? And higher ed is going in exactly the opposite direction. They should be forcing students to use AI, and they're trying to force them not to. And it drives me bananas.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a huge gap, right? Because like as soon as you jump into the workforce, like any like employer worth their salt is going to be like, you know what, like we're doing like, and we just had a company retreat, like we're going to use AI for everything possible that like can speed us up and make us more productive.
Yeah, like, let's all own. There's probably hallucinations in there. There's probably, but when you talk about return on investment, I got in 30 seconds, 90% of the information that I would have gotten had I previously spent 30 days doing this research. That is a trade-off every working adult is being asked to make now. And the idea that we're not training actively and intentionally our young people to do the same thing so they're ready for that when they enter the workplace is, in my mind, it is, again, if we're going to go back and talk about integrity, the academy should be ashamed of itself. We have absolutely lost our way and our integrity of what we're saying we do, which is preparing people to engage in modern society and the modern workforce.
Oh, I totally agree. I guess like maybe like on the other hand though, like, we cannot just take like our current assessments and the way that we like, assess students, traditionally and also just say, you know what, now you have unfettered access to ChatGPT, like completely same assessments, right? Because like, we're not actually measuring anything by doing that, right? Like we have students and AIs that have like, complementary like skill sets, right? And so like what we need to be assessing is, are students competent in the skill set that AI is currently not competent in, right?
That's right. The assessment has to change, right?
Exactly.
Not the student's use of AI. The assessments have to change, and they have to change quick.
Definitely. So what would you say to like, a professor that says like, you know what, like, like let's say that they're like an English professor that like knows nothing about like how AI works or like what AI is good at. Like, they're just like, normal English teacher whose like life has been upended by this. Like, what would you say to them on like, okay, like they're like, I don't know how to change my assessments. Like I've been doing the same thing for 30 years. Like, what do I do to like, AI proof my assessments? Like, what would you say to them? Like,
and this is again,
could be both.
what I'm channeling here is my hat as a mom and as a former high school teacher and principal, where it's funny to me the different standards we have for young people versus professionals. And all of the time, young people will come in and say, well, I didn't do this because I didn't know how to do it. And, well, what did you try? Right? What steps did you take? What about that didn't work? And what you'll find out is that basically what it comes down to is, I've tried nothing and I'm all out of ideas, right? I'm not doing anything and I don't know. Like they haven't tried a thing. They've just lamented and thrown their hands up. And I'm talking about students right now. And so then the conversation would be like, why are you coming to me not having done your end of the work here? What would a person with common sense do here, right? So for an English teacher, it's like, well, I'm not an English professor, right? I've never taught that subject area in my life. But immediately, on first glance, I'm sitting down and thinking, what is the point of things like a literature class and engaging with the greats? It's not so that you can write a 5-paragraph essay about it. It's so that you're learning how to pick up on like thematic analysis, on conflict, on metaphorical commentary in society, how to discern what's true from what's not. These are really important themes. And my question is, okay, so if it's not an essay, how instead can we talk about this, right? Like what, if I didn't have to use an essay, what would be ways in which I could see whether or not you're really picking up on that? And I would probably do something like have an Oxford style tutorial where these Socratic seminars where let them know that's going to be the discussion. Go research it. Go find out from AI what it says is the first pass at this. Now come in and talk with me and I'm going to play devil's advocate, right? In an age of truthiness, in an age in the United States where every day we wake up and no one knows what's true and what's not, I'm going to play devil's advocate and anything you say as your English teacher, I'm going to say, well, that's not true because X. And I'm going to make it up. It might be true. It might not be. How do you defend yourself? How do you analyze and reason? You have to actually weigh what AI gave you versus what I'm telling you. How are you going to engage with that? Now, again, I'm not an English professor, but I suspect a lot of English professors who've really thought about this will say, yes, I do that, and I do these 10 other things. And my question is when I hear people, again, I know this sounds harsh, but I'm actually kind of tired of engaging in this, what to call it, preciousness and in this sort of learned helplessness of don't know what to do. Do you really not? Because if you really don't know what to do after 30 years of teaching higher order thinking, you don't have any idea how to approach this problem and use some higher order thinking to come up with a solution, and you've tried nothing, but you're all out of ideas. Do you really not know? Or are you being obstinate and intentionally acting helpless right now? And I think that's a big problem in the academy right now, to be honest.
Oh no, I appreciate the candor, and I think this is very real. And I think like one thing that is a tradition in academia, like often is just like you ask somebody why they're doing something, and they're just like, oh well, like I've just been doing the same thing for a long time, and this is what I was taught to do. This is how I went through school. This is what my professor did, and so like there's just this kind of group of people that are just very like stuck in the mud, like I want to do it this way, and nothing's gonna stop me, and very frustrating.
And that's the thing is, and this is not true for all of higher ed, right? I think there are a ton of higher ed professionals who want to see students learn, who want to see readiness. And what I appreciate is I'm watching those individuals come together and have constructive, formative conversations of how do we address this changing landscape? What are we going to do? Here's what I'm doing. What are you doing? How do we build on this? What I find inauthentic and disingenuous is this other segment of the population within higher ed that just doesn't want to. And again, is it that you don't know how? or you don't want to, and so you're saying you don't know how. And those are two different things. And I think we need to get clear as an institution that that latter group, you can't keep using that as an excuse of like, oh, I wish I could, but what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to change assessment. Like, you have a PhD in your subject area. You are supposed to be here because you're a critical thought leader in your space. And you're telling me you don't have any idea how to keep up with the evolution of your field. Why are you here? Let's just have an honest conversation. Why are you here?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think these two things of like, I don't want to versus I don't know how, these aren't necessarily independent things either. Like, I think like, a lot of people could say like, oh, well, it seems like a lot of work, therefore I don't want to, right?
Correct. But let's have that conversation honestly, right? Like this is what bothers me in the space is people will act so precious and earnest about, oh, the problem is I would love to support this critical thinking. You've got me. I'm on board conceptually, but the problem is the space isn't ready. We don't know what to do. And that's a disingenuous argument, and it undermines the field because it obfuscates what the real issue is, right? The real issue is not that we don't know how. Even where there's uncertainty, there's always uncertainty in higher ed, right? We're in the business of navigating knowledge and epistemology and ontology and truth. Like, that's our business. To pretend that somehow it's different here is, again, I feel very strongly about this, as you might have noticed. It's dishonest. And again, if the whole point of this series is academic integrity, I just think that we have to hold ourselves to the same standards that we're demanding of students, which is, are we acting with integrity when we talk about this topic, or are we making up excuses? Because the fact of the matter is, changing sounds hard. Changing sounds scary. It sounds like a lot of work. And we don't want to admit those things out loud, so we're calling it something else.
Oh, no, I totally appreciate that. And I think that like we agree that like basically like the path forward here is redesigning assessment. Like basically like, we need to, teach our students, the skill set that they're going to need when they enter the workforce, which involves using a lot of AI, obviously.
That's right.
And in terms of like getting there, like kind of where do you see as kind of the bottleneck? Do you see it as more of like, okay, like redesigning assessment just needs to be made easier, or do you see it as like more of an ideological bottleneck where like people need to be convinced that this is the path forward?
I really think this is an ideology thing because here's the problem is all of the faculty I know take their assessment really seriously. Like the ones who live in both of the camps that I'm talking about, right? The ones who are really earnest and trying to make changes, and those who are really obstinate about this change and fighting it with everything they can. All of those groups take assessment in their field very seriously. And so for me, the idea that a group of professionals who have all of these communities of practice and working groups and departments and convenings have not come together, like if this wasn't a philosophical issue, if it was actually a tactical deployment issue, I just don't believe that the infrastructure we have in place with all of those networks wouldn't have surfaced the issue, right? And I think, again, the challenge is not, I have my own ideas as to what I think that assessment should look like, which I'm happy to share, but I don't think it has to be the only thing. I think there are many ways to tackle the changing nature of assessment. I have a theory. I think many other smart people out there have different theories than me, but for people to look around and just say, like, we just don't know what to do, that sounds more to me like an ideological cop-out, right? That sounds more to me like a philosophical recalcitrance and reticence that is not actually a technical deployment issue.
Yeah, definitely. Like I like have my own theories, but like where do you think like this kind of attitude comes from?
I think, the world is not a monolith. So I think there are different reasons out there. Again, let's first bifurcate our groups. There are a huge number of higher ed folks who might be listening to this right now who don't come at me. I'm with you. I'm doing this work already. Like don't put my name into this bucket. So let's first set all of that aside. I think actually the majority of higher ed faculty are thinking about this in really thoughtful ways. Now let's take what's left. And I'm totally making up numbers here. I'm doing my own chat GPT hallucination here. But let's say that is this remaining bucket is 30% of our instructional faculty. I would put within that two two primary buckets, and we'll even break them down and we'll just call it a 50-50, right? So 15% and 15%, half each of that 30%. The first 15% are what I would call the ideological diehards, right? They were raised in the letters, they went and did research in the library. They wrote things out by hand, whatever it was, probably by candlelight because we didn't have electricity yet, right? But these are people who genuinely love and believe in the traditional memory they have of the academy, right? Like they probably have such nostalgia for it and loved that way of thinking and learning that they actually became higher ed practitioners because of that. And so they feel this love for that system and genuinely lament what they feel like is a loss of richness by that going away. I think that's one philosophical.
I think creative fields are very much like artists, like creative writers, in a way. Like there are some people that believe like AI is not coming from my field, like AI has no place in my field. And, I think maybe for a small subset, that's true.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Again, so I think that's one philosophical bucket.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with you, right? Like we agree to disagree on this one, but let's just get clear on we're having a philosophical disagreement as opposed to a technical deployment challenge, right? So that's,
Sure.
I think you're right. There's a group that has that bucket that, again, I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong and I'm right, though I tend to think that way about everything I say in the world, right? But what I am saying is, let's get clear on the argument we're having here is a philosophical debate there and not actually this like, well, I just don't know how to change assessment here. It's like, no, you don't believe there's any space for AI in your field. That's okay, but let's just be clear-eyed about what we're saying and actually talk about that. So that's the first group. The second group I would say is more of a path of least resistance group, right? So a lot of times the group that I put in here is these are people who actually are researchers. Like they went into higher ed because they want to be doing research. They don't actually care about teaching. It's something they're forced to do. And so everything for them in that space is about the path of least resistance, minimizing the space it takes up, minimizing what it needs from them. Not because they're lazy people, but because this is something that they didn't want to be doing in the first place. This is not their priority. And so they're going to minimize, as a rational actor, they're going to minimize the amount of time they spend on it so that they can prioritize other things. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I understand if you went into higher ed because you want to go run your research lab, but you are required to teach an intro to biochem course every semester, I get it. I understand. But let's just have an honest conversation that is the issue, not this big question of like, well, tactically, how could we ever do this?
Yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. And like, I mean, the thing that we encourage, like, if people are just like, oh, like, I don't know how to redesign my assessment, we just be like, okay, like, how would you use ChatGPT? Like, as a, working researcher in your field, like,
Like, what, when the 10 million other things you're not sure how to do in your field on any given day, what do? You go ask a colleague, you phone a friend, you use Google, you go look things up, so this idea, again, the phrase that keeps coming back to me is, I've tried nothing and I'm all out of ideas. When I hear people in that space saying like, well, I just don't know what to do. My question is, how have you solved other problems in your space where you didn't know what to do? And why has that not worked here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like there's another kind of like group here where it's like, okay, like, maybe like some classes that were previously relevant. And this is for me especially pertinent because I'm like a computer scientist, right? And so like there are plenty of like spaces of computer science where like the skills that were taught in one class like 10 years ago are not even relevant anymore and those skills shouldn't exist, right? Like, like 10 years ago we were teaching people how to program in assembly. Now like we don't do that anymore just because like the technology exists such that we don't need to do that. And so we shouldn't be thinking about our assembly class in the way of like, oh, like how do we redesign assessment for assembly when like Python and C++ exist? We should be thinking like this class shouldn't even exist in the first place anymore. Because this is just not a relevant skill, right? And so part of redesigning assessment is going beyond just like, okay, like how do I like look at this individual little test and make sure that it's AI proof? It's really thinking about like, from a high level, like what are all of the things that we need to be teaching our students today? And like, how do we restructure like, just like the entire, like, maybe this class shouldn't even exist at all, right?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that this is an the podcast so that people can't see me getting like red and guilty over this. Because exactly, like this is not the first time that the Academy, as a group that is responsible for assembling and disseminating not just knowledge, but world schemas, ways of thinking. This is not the first time that they've been asked to prune and cull. I say they, I'm part of the Academy, right? This is not the first time we've asked to prune and cull and innovate on our body of knowledge, both the epistemology of it, the ontology of it, and the pedagogy of it, right? This is our practice. This is our field. And so this lamenting and hand wringing of like, oh, if only we knew how to do it, it's just not honest, right? If we're in the spirit of talking about integrity, we got to worry about students' academic integrity. We've got to worry about our own integrity as an academy. And I think that latter is actually a much bigger issue if we're being honest with ourselves about the role AI plays in this space.
Definitely. I guess maybe like kind of like shifting gears a little bit. So I know like with craft, obviously, like you guys think about like kind of apprenticeship training a lot, obviously. Like, do you kind of see that like, the structure of how higher education looks as like changing a lot due to AI and kind of like in your opinion, like kind of what do you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? I believe that as someone who has seen the benefits in my own family's life, and in the lives of the people I've worked with, the value of experiential learning pathways, I'm always going to advocate for that should be a major and much more mainstream option than we currently make available to learners. Now, here's what I'll also say. Again, in the same way that the academy is not a monolith, learners are not monoliths. There will be many students who will love traditional higher education settings, and that's okay, right? But there should be real choice and real options for people. And I do think that right now we are under indexing on the power of blending together higher education with real world experiential learning pathways, whether that's computer science, teaching, healthcare. I think it's funny that, in many places, my husband's a doctor. He wasn't allowed to be a practicing physician without going through an apprenticeship. We called it a residency, but it was an apprenticeship. And I think that there's a long track record of these spaces being married together. It's always been for very niche experiences on one end of the spectrum or the other, either what we would consider super elite, right? Things like being a doctor going through residency, or when we as an organization get very elitist, like let's talk about it. On the other end, we tend to see things like the trades, whether it should be there or not, we tend to see is on the other end of being elite and rigorous. And we have abdicated the space in between at every other profession along the spectrum. And my opinion is not that every person on the spectrum has to go through those pathways, but anywhere you live on that spectrum of whatever pathway you want to pursue, apprenticeship degree should be an option that you can choose or not choose to utilize.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I'm kind of curious, like maybe, and maybe we'll kind of figure out in the kind of the coming years with your work, like kind of exactly what that looks like. But yeah, really excited to kind of just see how this ends up panning out.
Yeah, I'll say we're starting right now in professions that require a college degree, but that and where there's usually a practical clinical component already, and that paradoxically we're seeing massive shortages in the space because the cost of being out of the workforce to go do that clinical experience for free drives people away. They can't afford it. So think teaching, doing the clinical student teaching experience. Think nurses doing their preceptorship. Think social workers logging their clinical hours, right? Their practitioner hours. We're seeing that as the place to start. We're seeing it get phenomenal results in those sectors of attracting super diverse talent, retaining it through these programs, and having them launch with really successful outcomes after graduation, more successful than many of their peers in traditional pathways in terms of job placement, in terms of 1 to 5 year wage gains post completion, et cetera, persistence in the field. So we're starting in those spaces. But I'll say with the results we're seeing, we're hearing from employers. We're hearing from employers in higher ed an appetite for growing this into spaces where those components weren't necessarily required, right? In spaces like claims adjustment for insurance, spaces like computer science and engineering, there's there is a premium that our society puts on experience and knowing how to do things. And so while we're starting in that sort of regulated clinical experience-based jobs, we're seeing a lot of appetite that I think will continue to pull the market in a pronounced way over the next decade.
Oh, definitely. I can already see this, like, in my own industry in tech. Like, I mean, I think like my friends that are, hiring managers at big tech companies, like they say year after year, they're like, new grads are like even less and less prepared for like the real world jobs that we have to offer them like every single year. Like, you'd be shocked like how many computer science graduates like cannot write a single line of code. And it's like, okay, well, like, how do we teach these people how to write code? Like, you have to do something in order to get good at it, right? So, I mean, I think providing them like this kind of experience, like, is like a no brainer, and I can imagine so many other things this applies to.
Right. No principal wants to hire a first-year teacher. No hospital wants to hire a first-year nurse. Computer software programs are always saying, come to me when you've got 3 to 5 years of experience. We know that actually doing the thing is the best way to be prepared to do the thing. And so what if we just had that doing of the thing, whether it's teaching or providing healthcare or writing code? What if you were just doing that from day one of your degree with graduated complexity along the way, but always in that authentic experience, always getting feedback from what will ultimately be the marketplace where you're going to have to go sell your services?
Definitely. I mean, I guess like with the analogy, like in tech again, like, I mean, I think like what these computer science programs will often say, like why they don't offer these things is like, oh, like, tech is so fast moving. Like if we just did apprenticeships in like React or like TypeScript, then like the technology is going to change and like everyone's going to be using a different framework in like a couple of years. And so I think there is room for just kind of like the general broad-based education where you are just teaching like, general skill, like general learning how to learn skills, so that people can be up to date on the technology. But at the same time, like that has to be complemented with like, okay, you can't learn no framework because like then you're not going to be relevant even like, in the very short term of like, how can I be useful to a company today, immediately after I graduate?
That's it. And I realize I'm harping, push me off my soapbox after this. But I think there's this false binary that we create in higher education of, well, if I have them going out and doing this practitioner-based work, they'll never learn to think. They're just going to learn how to do rote skills. They're never going to learn higher order thinking. They're never going to learn frameworks. And my argument is, if you actually believe that, then you yourself are not a good enough educator that you should be educating, right? Like there's no pedagogical foundation for that. And so again, I feel really strongly on this one. Clearly, I got a hot take on this one, but that people who say that, I'm like, one of two things is true. And in both cases, they lead to the same outcome, right? So thing one that could be true is you actually believe that, in which case, as I just said, I actually don't think you have the pedagogical chops to be in the line of work you're in. Thing two is that you don't actually believe what you're saying, but you're saying it as a red herring because you don't want to have a debate about the real thing, which is that you don't want to do this for whatever philosophical reason. And in either case, the outcome is you shouldn't be having a voice in this conversation. It's just, to be quite honest, if you don't either have the skills to engage pedagogically or the desire to do so honestly, you are not a voice that is going to be contributing to how we actually move this space forward productively. And so the best thing you can do is be quiet.
Wow, oh my God. You've been way too timid.
I know. That's me. I'm always too timid. I'm too timid.
So, Bradley, last question. Anything else?
Go for it, Alvin.
Okay, great. Wow, Mallory, fire. So, what do you see as the future of academic integrity?
I think there is a reconciling coming inside of higher education, and we are living in a extinction level event moment for higher ed, where on the other side of this, people are seeing that there is not ROI for going to college in the way that there used to be, that they do not believe that anymore. And people are going to stop categorically believing that any college is good for them. And so what we're going to see is colleges are going to figure out their value proposition. I will say for the Ivies of the world, the Stanfords, the Penns, the Harvards, et cetera, they will always have a value proposition, whether they make this leap or not. So let's set them aside and talk about the 95% of us in higher ed. The 95% of us will either get serious about understanding the direct linkage between the ROI we provide our learners, how we teach and assess them, and therefore how we ask them to engage with AI and other technologies, we will have that honest reckoning. And those of us that do that and establish or reestablish our value proposition within that frame will survive. But we will do it by shifting assessment and conversations around academic integrity away from trying to keep you from using tools to instead forcing you to use those tools in authentic settings and holding you to a really high standard of you being able to deliver in a way that would drive value for that authentic setting for an employer or someone else, right? Some of us will do that. We will persist. Others will not. They will fight this. They will double down on blue books. And it might not happen overnight, but they will see declining enrollments. They will see a shuttering of programs. And I think that they will close.
Wow. Mic drop. That was pretty impressive there, Mallory. I appreciate that. So this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for your time. First, let me outro my co-host, who is the most. He is Bradley Emmy, CTO and co-founder at Pangram Labs. Bradley, thank you as always.
Oh, no, thank you as always, Elvin, for having me on the show. I always love these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, it's fantastic. This is a good one. So I want to outro our guest. She's your guest today. She is Mallory Dwinal, Palisch, and she is president at Craft Education, the Craft Education System. Mallory, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.